Good morning, Lord Ashcroft and Mr. Giuseppe.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. It's nice to see you guys again after all this time.
It has been quite a while.
Indeed, indeed. But I'm now coming back to Belize on a more regular basis, and I'm enjoying it too.
You mean your coming back to town has nothing to do with elections?
No, well, March the 4th is obviously a very, very important day. But I didn't realize how everyone here in Belize wanted to share the importance of March the 4th. But I'm flattered. It's my birthday.
Convenient, isn't it? Now, it's a very important question given the amount of speculation that people have had about your visit being timed so close to the municipal elections. So let me ask you, are you here to offer financing to any of the political parties vying for the election?
Well, there's the general election, which could be up to 3 years' time, but with the possibility that it could well be towards the end of this year. So I think all the political parties need to reflect on between now and the full 5-year term. And the municipal elections are some indicator, but not necessarily an indicator as to how people will vote in a general election. Because some people here in Belize believe that perhaps they should vote for the party in government because they get the goodies. So there's a sort of an underlying self-interest on that particular one. And on the other hand, there'll be people who do believe that in a thriving democracy, you do need a strong opposition. And I'm really in that camp, that I believe in any democracy, you mustn't let a government become too powerful, and you must at least give the opposition a chance to lay out their wares, their goods, and so on and so forth. So the fact that I'm here at this particular time, in fact, I started to come back on a regular basis towards the end of last year, and I intend to do so, was more coincidental that there were municipal elections. But I understand the fervour that generates around it. But I do intend to take quite an interest in the politics of Belize over the next period of time.
And to get a very straight answer to the question as to whether or not you're offering finances to any of the major political parties?
No, I'm not offering any major political financing to any of the political parties at this particular point of time. That's not to say that I will not, but not at this particular time.
So you are open to discussing with both parties?
I'm open to discussion, but I think the fundamental aspect to me is thriving opposition. You must have your structures in society in such a way that a government that has significant power is not in a position to unilaterally abuse it or use it to the detriment of its citizens.
But most small countries like Belize, where you have the winner takes all, how do you get the opposition to be robust?
Well, it's a difficult one. And you start to answer the question as to whether the first past the post system, where the winner takes all, is the appropriate system in a democracy. We have that debate in the United Kingdom all the time. We've had in the UK since the Second World War very much a two-party system, where perhaps 25, 30 years ago, well over 90% of the votes went to the two principal parties. In this election, which is in May, the polls show that the two major parties are polling just over 60%, and there has been a rise of other parties during this parliament as the population gets disillusioned with just alternating between both parties. So sooner or later, there does come to be the rise or a broadening of consumer choice, and this is where I think what you guys call a third party. But any other party can start to make ground when there becomes disillusionment and disenchantment with the alternating of two governments. Because it becomes, after a while, not the best of choices, but the least worst alternative.
Which is often said in Belize, you vote out a party versus vote in a party. But let's step into your perspective on third parties, because we have been seeing a growing movement in Belize. Several districts for the upcoming municipal elections have full slates of a third party. Belmopan, the capital, has 5 mayoral candidates. What's your perspective on the involvement of third parties?
Well, I think that over a number of parliamentary cycles, there will be, and it's natural that there is an increase. But the most important thing of the rise of another party is the credibility of the people around it. You can have a party that has no credibility or run by people who have no credibility, and it doesn't get very far. It needs some dynamic leader to come forward and to be actually say that we must break down the two-party system. And then there can be some momentum. And we had this in the UK in this last few years, where we had the rise of a gentleman called Nigel Farage, who formed a party called the United Kingdom Independence Party, who has come from 2 or 3% vote in a general election to now polling 17, 18, 19%, and maybe for the first time taking a few seats at the general election. But it has taken the charisma of one person to get that party moving and off the ground. And their original platform was for Britain to come out of the European Union. And in our European elections a couple of years ago, they in fact became the #1 party for the first time over the two established parties. So it all depends on the momentum, the credibility, and for an electorate to be disenchanted with the continual voting for the two same old parties. And I think we have some coffee here, just some convenient timing towards the end of that question.
While you talk about all the other things, the credibility, disenchantment and all of that, that's there. But very often just funding for them has become an issue. Is that something that you'd consider when it comes to a third party actually funding, especially given the fact that people also worry about big interests, as they may call it as well?
Of course, all these things have a playoff. But if Belize is going to grow, there are certain things which I think the citizens should be concerned about, and to see how and what each party offers. And in no particular order of importance, I have a strong belief in a mixed economy. I believe that a country has to create wealth before it talks about its distribution. And I don't believe that you should borrow money to distribute, because the borrowing of money puts a burden on generations to come. And it's often for politicians the easy thing to do. Go borrow, spend, get some short-term growth, and then boast about the short-term growth. Now, we have a situation at the moment in Belize with the Petrocarib funds. Now, this is debt that Belize is adding to its burden. And of course, by spending the Petrocarib money within Belize, we'll have growth. So I think the last figures being reported are 3% growth in Belize. But this is a totally unsustainable figure. Don't take my word for it. Take the view of those that monitor the economies of countries like Belize, whether it's the credit agencies or even the last IMF report, which talked in terms of it would take Belize 60 years to actually get to a balanced economy because of the increasing debt levels that there are. So there has to be in a society, and you also need foreign investment. You mustn't be proud of the fact that, you know, international capital is vital. Countries around the world invite, even Britain opens the door to foreign investment in its economy.
So when you look at, because you're talking about growth economics for Belize, and we're looking at the traditional exports really undergoing major changes, what would you say then is the best path for Belize in terms of a balance between what we've done traditionally and how do we chart a way forward for the future to grow?
Well, you know, there are many paths to an end objective, but I think that one of the first things is you have to create the climate in which people are confident to invest. And now one of the most important things is independence of the judiciary, or confidence in the judiciary. Now, there was a time when there was great confidence in Belize's judiciary. We had, in fact, a very good court of appeal from some of the best judges around the Caribbean, And then it went to the Privy Council in the United Kingdom, in which one of the best courts in the world. We in Belize have systematically dismantled some of the perceptions of what is an independent judiciary, which means that investors are having to consider that if there be any dispute in Belize, what is the quality of the legal process? And there are other factors. So a mixed economy is important. So if somebody came forward with a third party who actually believed in, let's say, extreme left-wing views of soaking the rich and all the rest of it, this is a path to disaster for any country. There is no left-wing socialist government that has ever survived the long term. Eventually, they run out of other people's money. And so it just doesn't work. It took Venezuela much longer to get to the position where they're now queuing for bread because they had oil as a natural resource, which enabled them to be incompetent and go on extreme left-wing policies. A mixed economy where you balance this creation of wealth with the needs of the people, and there are two sides to that occasion. You want an independent police force. You want one where, in fact, they're answerable to the people rather than to a government minister. There shouldn't be a dictation by government ministers that you do this, you do that, and leave him alone, and leave him alone. And independence there. And then you want a banking system in which there is confidence by the bankers in order to lend money to productive sector and to help Belizean entrepreneurs get off the ground. Now, at the moment, there is no confidence from the bankers in Belize. There is well over $300 million of excess liquidity in the banks that they have great difficulty in lending in the current climate. And one of the biggest problems is the regulatory directives that if somebody defaults on a loan, then you immediately have to go through a series of providing up to 70% of that loan, irrespective of the value of the security. And if you make a loan that's unsecured and they default, you have to provide 100% for it. So bankers are saying, whoa, hold on, guys. This is just not worth taking any greater risk than we really have to. So again, you need a system in which local entrepreneurs can be also encouraged.
I want to go back. You touched several issues there, but I want to start off with the investor confidence issue, because we know that when the nationalization of Belize Telemedia first took place, this was one of the immediate effects that took place in terms of ratings and in several other ways that we've seen so far. However, there seems to be a small building of confidence at this point in time. Let's bring in your perspective as to how things have progressed over the past couple of years since you've been essentially fighting for your money from the company.
Well, may I first put you right on what you've said. You've just said, fighting for my money. Telemedia, I have no shares in Telemedia, and I had no shares in Telemedia when it was nationalized. At the point of nationalization, Telemedia was owned as to 70% by a charitable trust for the benefit of the Belize people, and 25% was for the employees through an employees' trust. Now, from the start, the government, for political purposes, has framed this as if this is a fight between the government of Belize and myself. It never has been. It has been a fight between the government and the charities that are now getting less money than they would have got, and the employees who will eventually get less money than they would otherwise have got. And the whole costs of this fighting has been borne by Belizeans directly and indirectly. As far as I'm concerned, at the end of the day, whatever happens here, the value belongs here in Belize. And I make this abundantly clear. I have no financial interest in Telemedia, irrespective of the rhetoric that is used for political purposes.
Now, the way it has been framed is that while the charities may have been formed, it's just a mechanism within the business sector that you still control. So how do you respond to that?
Well, there's a lot of difference between something that is controlled and in which you have an economic interest. All charities have trustees who have a legal obligation to the beneficiaries of that charity. And the trustees of the BTL Employees Trust have an obligation to the employees whose interests they represent. So I don't think you should confuse the issues here at all. If compensation comes for telemedia, that compensation will remain within either the charitable trust for distribution, long-term distribution to deserving causes within Belize, or within the BTL Employees Trust, for them to then work out how they want to distribute this to the employees of BTL.
So what would be...
Well, we use the name BTL now, but that's the old name, of course. Of course, telemedia we mean.
So what would be the ideal? Being compensated or having the company returned?
Well, this depends. It's like you, for example, you want to sell your house and you think it's worth X unit of money and all you're offered is 50% of X, then you'll say, I'll keep my house. If all of a sudden somebody says, I'll offer you 2X, you'll sell your house. So it's not a question that can be answered at this particular point of time because any compensation figure has not yet been determined.
Why a renewed interest in what's happening in the country at this time, especially since you've not been visible for a number of years?
Well, there was actually very little reason for me to spend an enormous amount of time here. You know, once you have a dispute with the government, there's nothing much you can do whilst that process is running through. But as I said to you, that then comes to an end. And my roots run deep in Belize. You know, don't forget, I went to school here. I went to St. Catherine's Academy here. I've got a lot of history here. Plus the fact I'm getting a little older as well, and so the rest of my life eases up a little bit. And I just love the environment, the people, the whole thing about Belize. I just wish that it could progress better and faster than it does, and I believe that it can.